What is the most disturbing thing you've witnessed and can't forget about? I was going to a park beside my work to eat in peace and crossed a woman lingering at the entrance. There was only me, her and 2-3 other people in the whole park, so it was really calm. Suddenly I hear a really weird, loud and long screech. At first I thought it a young group of girls messing around and screaming, laughing, but then it continued and sounded really weird, so I thought maybe it was a strange bird or a cat or something. I finish my lunch and head back to the exit, but there are cops there in police tape. I walked through there not even 10 minutes beforehand, so I ask the cops what's going on. They just look at each other and tell me to use the other exit. I walk out and there's ambulances, the fire department and lots of police cars blocking the street. Half an hour later I see a news report saying a woman set herself on fire in that park. There was a picture of her and sure enough that's the woman I crossed when walking in. That scream still disturbs me when I think of it. It didn't sound like a human at all. Maybe if I had said hi or something things would have been different. Most likely not, but who knows. I don't know if this is the most disturbing thing I've ever witnessed, but it was the first to spring to mind. This one is seared into my hippocampus. Summer, 1994. I was 12. My family had spent the day at the water park. My folks ordered a couple pizzas from the nearby Little Caesars which we'd pick up while driving home. When we arrived, my dad instructed me to run in and gather our pizzas while he waited in the car with my mom and siblings. The restaurant was one of those where the kitchen is exposed, and completely visible. The place was empty, so I walked up to the counter and quietly waited for an employee to arrive. Perhaps they were in the back gathering ingredients. Just then, a door in the back swung open, and out stumbled an employee. His face was red and very sweaty. And he was hurriedly attempting to pull up his pants, which were around his knees. I definitely saw penis. "Oh, shit. Sorry, buddy. Didn't see you there. You been waiting long?" he asked, as he buttoned his pants. Being 12, I wasn't really sure what I was witnessing. My body went into autopilot. I placed the money on the counter and told him that I was picking up pizzas. "Yeah, sure, no problem, dude." He stepped back by the ovens. I then witnessed this man slip off his shirt and use it to wipe the sweat off his face. He then used the shirt like a rag to wipe his hands and fingers. He then wiped the prep counter with it. He opened up the oven door, and using the soiled shirt like an oven mitt, pulled the 2 pizzas out of the oven and threw them in boxes. I'm sure I saw drips of sweat fly off his face and onto our pizzas. He then put the shirt back on and walked back to the counter with our pizzas. Phew. Hot in here, huh? Yeah, sorry, our air conditioning went out this morning. It wasn't hot in the restaurant. Just then, another employee, an older man, walked out of the same back room. He was also red and sweaty. I grabbed the pizzas and hurried back to my family. I climbed into the van and explained to my parents what I just witnessed. My mom and dad exchanged glances. My dad asked for the pizzas, got out of the car, and walked into the restaurant. In the meantime, in an attempt to protect my young mind from unsavory realities, my mom clumsily threw together an explanation. My dad returned from the restaurant without the pizzas. My parents exchanged looks again. When I asked what happened, my dad announced that we were going out for Chinese instead. I was told we would not be talking about it any further. The next day, my dad sat me down and asked me to very carefully recollect what had happened in the restaurant. That was the last we ever spoke of it. I have no idea what my folks ever did. What I do know is that we never ate Little Caesars pizza ever again. Once upon a time when I was roughly 12 or 13, I was with my nearly stepfather cleaning out a storage unit. I saw a suitcase in the parking lot. Most of the stuff in my life at that point came via donation or dumpster diving, so I didn't think twice about opening it. It was full of Polaroid photos of women all tied up and blindfolded and stuff. I don't remember any details of the photos beyond that. The most disturbing part to me though was how fast my nearly stepfather picked it up, brought it home and burned it. No discussion of calling the cops. I don't think he even told my bio mother. I think about this a lot. Edit. A lot of you encouraged me to tell someone about this. So today I did. I told a close cousin I found after I became an adult, someone familiar with my family history. She further encouraged me and gave me the contact info of someone. I just sent the email off and we'll see what, if anything, happens. I don't know if it's enough to help anyone. I feel like it's not. But I do feel better knowing I made an effort. Regardless. An elderly woman who was left to die alone, in her own house with no power or water, surrounded by junk/trash/half-eaten fast food, who was basically confined to a hospital bed and had one of those portable hospital toilets next to her bed for her to use. This happened in the winter time. She died when she got up to use the toilet, fell over while sitting on it, and spilled the contents all over the floor. I don't know how long she had been dead, but the contents of the toilet were frozen to the floor. Her piece of shit son was supposed to be taking care of her and instead was stealing her pension and social security checks. He would stop in 2-3 times a week to bring her a bag of fast food, mostly McDonald's. He did call 911 to report her death at least when he stopped by one night to drop off a bag of food. I have never been so disgusted and furious at someone in my life. He did end up taking a guilty plea and served some prison time, but it was nowhere near enough. I've seen more dead bodies, some who died violently, than I'd care to count, but that was the worst and the only one that's really stuck with me. I was driving down an old country road at night when my headlights caught a glimpse of something. I slowed down and saw what appeared to be a decrepit-looking person hunched over with a slow, ominous gait. They were just trudging along the side of the road in the middle of the night, like a nameless zombie. I pulled up beside them and hollered out. To my horror, I saw what appeared to be a middle-aged woman with stringy, greasy hair wearing some kind of gown. Not only was she barefoot, but her gown seemed to have blood stains all over it. I hollered out again but she just kept walking. "Ma'am," I said, "are you alright? What are you doing?" She stopped dead in her tracks and slowly turned her head towards me. She gave me this awful, scary-looking grin. Her teeth were disgusting. I immediately got a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew something wasn't right. Long story short, I called the police and followed alongside her in my vehicle. She didn't seem to mind me at all. She just kept walking. Eventually help arrived and it came to light that she was a resident at a nearby care facility. She had early onset dementia and apparently found her way out when no one was looking. Her period coincided with this event and she smeared the blood all over herself. This was years and years ago, but it's still fresh in my mind as a truly terrifying experience. I still have nightmares of seeing her limping along the dark highway, grinning maliciously. Couple years ago I was a part of a group of friends who got together almost every weekend to play some Magic the Gathering. One of the guys in our group always insisted doing it at his place probably because he has 2 kids to take care of, around 3 and 4 years old at the time, and didn't want to pay someone to watch them every weekend. The group picks a time later on a Saturday and I get to his place way before everyone else, so it's just him and his 2 kids and myself. He has ASO, but she was at work. Since we got bored waiting for everyone else to arrive we started to play a game. His 2 kids were running in the background doing their thing and would occasionally come to their father to ask him for something then go off and do their own thing again and he would check up on them periodically. It was starting to get warm in the house and so he opens his backyard door to let some cold air in. Now at this point he tells me he has already got the hot tub in his backyard going if we want to use it later on in the night and I simply respond with, "Sounds good," with no other thought about it in my mind. Fast forward maybe 10-ish minutes, we are still playing our game and he has not heard a peep from his youngest in a little while and goes to check on him while I'm just doing my thing and thinking about the game. Couple seconds later I hear the most horrifying scream a grown man has ever made. He was wailing his son's name at the top of his lungs, starting from his backyard into him sprinting into the house with his son's lifeless body and his arms soaking wet. He had gotten into the hot tub and was found floating face down when he had found him. I had assumed the worst the moment I saw his son in his arms. He then imminently laid his son on the floor and started CPR. I had no idea he knew how to do it, while I called 911. During the time it took the police and firefighters to get to his house, he was able to successfully resuscitate his son, made sure he was okay until the police showed up. He had also called his so after bringing him back and let her know what happened. She came rushing back home as well. The kid was okay, with no brain damage, but the image of a father wailing his son's name over and over while holding his son's limp, lifeless body in his arms is something I can't unsee. Needless to say, Magic Night was over. One boy at my school was dating a 13-year-old girl, told everyone she was 16. He was the type of guy who thinks everyone liked him when in reality everyone was weirded out because of his weird attitude. He also was very rich, which is probably why the girl dated him in the first place, and liked to boast about his money, while also telling everyone fun facts about all these drugs he tried to make in his basement while selling it to children. One day he came 3 hours too late to class because a friend of his was in the 7th month pregnant and got into labor. Everyone just turned their faces in disgust because all we could think about was this 18-year-old sleeping with a 12-year-old getting her pregnant. She turned 13 a few months ago, when in reality this pregnant girl was another girlfriend of his. Turns out he was dating several girls at the same time with every one of them knowing of each other. I just can't forget how this 13-year-old girl actually decided to date a 18-year-old asshole. I've been asked before, so no worries. So oh boy here we go. Several years ago I lived in an apartment with my girlfriend. I was lying in bed with her, and awoke around 3 a.m. The bedroom door was open, and through the doorway you could see into the kitchen. Above the sink in the kitchen, was a rectangular hole that made a bit of an indoor window to see the front door, as the kitchen itself was enclosed. When I awoke, I looked around, took a sip of water, placed it back on the nightstand. My eyes fell on my girlfriend, who was fast asleep and probably the most precious-looking sleeper in the entire world. I smiled. I was happy. I then heard an abrupt creak from the living room. I swiveled my head to look out the bedroom door from my bed. Through that little rectangular window above the sink, I saw a dark figure standing before the front door. Arms limply swayed beside its still body, which stood as rigid as a statue. With a shudder of disbelief, I blinked. In that split second, this thing was now looking through the window, above the sink. But I still couldn't make out any of its features. I thought I was just seeing things. My heart began to pound. Blink. It was in the kitchen now. Standing there. Its whole body facing me. I could now make out wisps of hair dangling from her head. Blink. A hand was now clutching the door frame, and only her head peeked around the side. She gazed at me almost into me. Like a starving prisoner catching sight of a plate of food, her head cocked before her body as if there was something in me she wanted. Something she desperately needed. Something she would take. I started breathing fast. My hands clutching the sheets to grab for my girlfriend. Blink. It stood before the bed. Head cocked, her gaunt form standing slightly crooked, with tattered garments hanging from her shoulders. Blink. A skeletal visage loomed above my face. Pitted eyes gazed into mine above an ear-lipless mouth contorted in a perpetually sad, but mocking grin. Yellow teeth parted, and a strained but inexorable bellow of anger and grief filled my ears, as I stared, wide-eyed, into the depthless, terrible maw. The sound built into a deafening roar. I squeezed my teary eyes shut. I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could. And I opened my eyes, to see my girlfriend waking up to my screams. The woman in rags was gone. I was a volunteer firefighter back in the day. And we got an EMS call to assist paramedics in removing a body. Odd, But no, unheard of. We got there and the reason they needed help was that the body was well over 400 pounds and she had been dead for at least a week in a double wide with no air, in Missouri, in July. The stench was otherworldly. The fucked up part is that her son had been living in the trailer the whole time, fried out of his mind on meth, and hadn't noticed the stench or the fact that he hadn't seen her in weeks. She was so big it took 6 guys to lift her and we had to cut a hole in the side of the trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Did you have any disturbing experiences that you still think about? Tell us the story in the comments below.